because
Okay.
Nicole will be so mad at me if I don't record it. Okay. So Professor Diamond is the Joseph and Wolf Lubavitch Chair of Jewish Studies at the University of Waterloo, former director of the university's Freiburg Geniza project. He holds a PhD in religious studies and medieval Jewish thought from the University of Toronto and an LLM from NYU's law school. He is very well known around the Shul community for his insightful lectures, and we are very excited to have him with us tonight on the 7th night of Hanukkah. Professor Diamond, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks for coming. I think I know you all, and Chag Sameach, Gittin Chodesh for the past day, and so let's you all see. I don't see the source sheet, so I don't know what's going on here. But anyways, okay. So I'm technologically challenged, as probably all of you are, I would think. So we share a common, a common concern. So what I want to do is just look at source one. So I'm going to deal with reading the Rambam tonight in the Mishnah Torah. So the Mishnah Torah, some of you, of course, know, is far more than a legal code. It is not simply law, like the Shulchan Aruch, really. It's very, very different than the Shulchan Aruch that became authoritative a few centuries after the Mishnah Torah. And perhaps that's the reason why the Shulchan Aruch became authoritative, is that the Rambam, being a philosopher and being concerned with thought and what the meaning of conduct is in Judaism, far beyond simply ritual and knowing what to do and what not to do, is concerned really conceptually with halakha. That is, his Mishnah Torah is really a conceptualization of the entire system of halakha. Its structure, that is very important. And so that's what I want to talk about. Here's an example of where structure, very different than the Shulchan Aruch, is very, very important in understanding how to read the Mishnah Torah and understanding how the Rambam might understand what Hanukkah is all about. So if you look at source one, so source one is the following. It's the beginning. So Hilchas Hanukkah, the laws of Hanukkah and the laws of Purim are combined. And so this is chapter 3 in that section. And he starts off with, unlike the Shulchan Aruch, the grounding in history. So we have a historical kind of review of what led to the establishment of the Chag. And of course, in Shulchan Aruch, you just have immediately, these are the things that are mutar, and these are the things that are asur, and that's it, right? That's it, because it is a code of law. So this will give you an idea of, no code of law that I know of really starts with this, although, Jerry's practiced law a lot longer than me. Maybe he'll be able to say different, but, so he starts with the following. B'vayit Sheni. So I have the Hebrew and the English together there. During the Second Temple period, the Greeks, imposed decrees. They eradicated the religion. Now notice, very important, so they didn't allow them to practice their religion, right? That is to follow the mitzvot. Pashtu yadam b'mamonam. They also expropriated or, tampered with the wealth, as dictators do. Ubivnotehem, also in family life, that is picking up on the Gemara, not explicitly here, but obviously picking up on the Gemara, that there were sexual liberties they took with the Jews. Partzubo Portzat, Betimo Tarot, they turned everything upside down, oppressed them. And so what you see here, of course, is what I think is that, what is, I think, news maybe to a lot of maybe religious people, is that Judaism does not exhaust Jewish life. So clearly here, the Rambam is actually covering a whole array, the vast array of the dimensions of normal life that go beyond simply the practice of religion. So it's the practice of religion, clearly. It is also economic destruction. It is also family life destruction. It is the destruction of those things that signify Israel's, that is, they entered the temple and kind of, made a mess there. So it cuts across all the dimensions of life in general that go beyond religion. So religion, that's what I mean by Judaism, in the sense of religion doesn't exhaust Jewish life. They attempted to destroy all Jewish life, including nationalism, right? I mean, they oppressed and subjugated the Jews. So their sovereignty was taken away as well, which goes beyond simply what we conceive of as religion in the modern period. And then, of course, until the Hashmonaim overcame them, and they established the Kohanim, the priests established a kingship, a monarchy that lasted for 200 years until, of course, the destruction of the Second Temple. That itself raises a problem. Some of you know the problem of priests actually becoming kings. Those positions were supposed to be actually completely distinct, not combined in one figure. That caused a problem later on. I'm not going to get into that, but that raises a problem. Now, I want you to look at this next one, because this is important. Because of this historical kind of leading up, this historical event, so the Chachamim Chazal decreed that there should be these days of Simcha and Hallel. One of the things that's important for Hanukkah. Umadlikin bahen hanerot ba'erev al pitchei habatim. You light, as we all know, at the entrances, at the windows, every night. Laharot ulegalot hanes, in order to kind of display and advertise the nes. Now, I want to tell you something that probably many people do not know, and that is that those words, and that's why I have in the English translation in question marks, those words, that is, laharot ulegalot hanes, in order to reveal the miracle, almost certainly were not written by Rambam's hand. Almost certainly. I never can say definitively, but all the most important manuscripts, the ancient Sephardic manuscripts, the most important manuscripts actually do not have those words. Leave out, and of course the Gemara, right? V'nasa bones, a miracle happened with the lighting, and it lit for 8 days. The Rambam, I would think, most certainly did not have that in his original text. Here I have a most recent kind of version, which does not have it, if you don't believe me. All the versions that most people have it. The one that's most accessible on the internet, the Chabad's, have it, because there you have a theological reason. People just are so inculcated that this is the way you look at it, that's the way it has to be. Probably not. I can't say definitively also. Now, the most recent versions don't have it. Rabbi Rabinovich, some of you might know, you're all of that age perhaps, that remember our own Rabbi Rabinovich, Nachum Rabinovich from Clanton Park, who served for many years, but he went on to become, I would say, a major Gadol Hador, but he is one of the most important modern commentaries on the Mishnah Torah, called the Yad Pshuta, and he used the best manuscripts, and he chose his version of the text. He also doesn't have it. So I'll go by that, which is important. It's important because Maimonides generally was down on the miraculous. That is, he tried to understand the Torah, Jewish history, from the point of view of natural processes as much as he could. And so that's an important thing to remember. So I want to get to the second source, which is the conclusion. So we have the beginning, and now we have the conclusion, which is also very different than the Shulchan Aruch. And he concludes with something that I find a bit curious. But there's symmetry between the beginning and the end, and there's also asymmetry. So the end is what you have there in source 2, a halacha. If one has to choose between, now the language is a bit unclear here, ner beito, literally translated, the light of his house, and the light of Hanukkah, that is, he doesn't have enough resources or whatever to light both of them, right? That is Hanukkah or the light of his house, then the light of his house takes priority, right? Because of shalom bayit, because of what comprises or what constitutes the house, the home. Shalom bayit literally translates peace in the home, but a kind of cohesive home is dependent on light in the house. What I mean is literally light in the house. That is, in the olden days when you didn't have electricity, it meant lighting the house with the candles, right? And then he adds this kind of midrashic flourish, which is not halachic, right? And as we know, for the sake of a possible adulterous woman called a soteh, the name of God is erased. I would say the holiest object known in Jewish life or to halakha is the name of God. There's all kinds of laws surrounding the name of God that can't be erased, can't be tampered with, all kinds of can't be pronounced. That name can actually be erased in the ordeal that determines whether an adulteress, whether a wife has committed adultery or not. Picking up on really the rabbinic notion of that ordeal, which is meant to bring husband and wife together, that it is meant to sift out the adulterous woman, but really they see the goal of that ordeal to bring a husband and wife back together, really going to the extent where a husband would never put a woman through this ordeal in order to find out. And so really it is to establish, that is the erasure of the divine name. The holiest thing known to Jewish life, right, is erased for the sake of maintaining the integrity of Jewish life, the home. So therefore, of course, the light of the house trumps the light of Hanukkah. And then he brings, very important, in fact, the purpose, shel kol haTorah nitna, the entire goal of the Torah as a whole is to inculcate peace. Lasot shalom ba'olam, shenemar, and then he quotes the verse in Mishlei, Derachea darchei noam, v'chol netivotea shalom, known to everyone here in this group, right? I don't even have to translate it. We can sing it if you want.
Professor,
yeah.
Since we can't really see the source sheet, can we?
Oh,
you try to scroll? We can see it, but we can't see the source you're on right now. So
okay, it's source number 2.
Right, but we can't see lower down the page.
Oh my God. So how do I get onto that?
Can you try pressing Alt and then Tab, and then it will cycle through your windows, and we might be able to see
Alt and Tab. Where is Alt on my
bottom next to the space bar?
I have Command
and Tab. That might. No. Okay. I tried.
Oh, you know what? I don't know why. In the beginning, I saw it, but there must be a way of.
Like, what do you see on your screen now?
Okay, let me bring it up here.
Great, that'd be great. Thank you.
Did I just bring it up? No.
And we can already see it. We can see source 1,
but
we can't see lower.
I don't know why I can't. So you don't know what I do? Anybody know what I do? I need to know. Anybody know what I should do here?
Shana Kravitz says you should click on View and then Page Size. Shana, can you unmute yourself? You might be able to better.
Where is View?
Navigate that than I can.
You know, this is the problem with. I'm about to swear because I can't stand Zoom. Okay, I can't stand it. Right? It's the worst thing that ever happened to the world. And it's
Professor,
take
a breath.
Okay.
Okay. Now, on the top blue bar.
Yes.
In the middle, at the right end of the possibilities is something that
no,
says
I
view.
don't have a bar. I have the
I see a
top.
bar. I see the screen in front of me and you have a bar. Right at the top, at the very top of the page, above the little tchotchkes that tell you, okay, see just above there.
You know, I
See where
don't
it says
have it.
home? Okay, move along, you have
I have
view.
show grid video, show grid, show
You're seeing
thumbnail
something
video,
different from me and I don't know why.
show active speaker video.
No. That's
Okay, oh, I
Zoom
see it.
stuff.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, so click on view.
I don't have view.
You're
I have
just,
mute, stop video, participants, new share.
no, that's too high. You have to go lower in the page. Look not at the screen, but at the page.
Wow.
Okay, so you have the page with the print on it. Above that, you have a bunch of stuff that is like, a bunch of stuff that we don't need to worry about. Above that, but below the black portion with the screen, there is a blue bar.
You know what? I just don't have that.
You
don't have
do. You keep moving right past it.
Okay.
Where? Okay, I'm
It's
going.
on the line where it says home, insert, draw, design, layout, references,
I think-
mailing, review.
Sorry,
view.
that's timeout. I think
Okay.
he's seeing a totally different screen than the rest of us. I think he's looking only at Zoom and not at the source sheet. Is that right, Professor?
Yeah.
Great. So
Okay.
if you go to the top of your Zoom box and you minimize the entire Zoom window, the very top where there's the single line that looks like a minus,
God.
at the very, very top of your screen, and you just minimize the whole Zoom window.
And now that's gone. Oh my God. Oh my God.
It's unwinnable.
My wife is
Okay.
already laughing. Okay. Wow. Should I just
I think you should just go ahead and we'll
no,
just listen.
because should I start it over again? Like,
If
I
you,
mean,
You mean reload the document?
like zoom in again, like just
Okay, stop sharing.
stop share. Okay.
that's a good way to do it.
I got it.
Okay, now we start again.
Okay.
Start sharing.
Where do I see start sharing? Share
At the
screen?
bottom in the green button, yeah.
Share screen? Okay, here we go.
Okay,
not
and
coming up.
now,
It's not
should
coming
be
up.
able
It's not
to
coming
move-
up on my thing. It's not coming up.
okay, give it a minute. It's old and cranky. It's Zoom.
It's just not coming up. I thought maybe I should leave the meeting and come back.
I
Okay,
don't think that would change anything.
we have it back. And we see your cursor moving along the page.
I know, but I can't get to the
Okay. All right, on your page, move your,
to you. Okay. So
Shikoyach, you did it.
did you see source 2? You guys
We
saw
see it now. We see it now.
Okay, so that's what I was talking about, source 2, with the verse from Mishlei, that the house near Beito, you see my cursor moving, trumps near Hanukkah. And he cites that the entire goal of the Torah is lasot shalom ba'olam, and he quotes the verse in Mishlei. So, okay. Is that okay, everybody? Yeah. Okay. Yes? Yes? Can you guys
Yes.
hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
amazing.
yes,
All
yes,
right.
now it works. Thank you.
All right. So
Now it
now,
works.
what I'd like to do is just for a couple of moments, talk about the relationship between this law and the law of Shabbat. So what I mean by asymmetry is that it's quite odd to me that you would start with this kind of, really accolades about this victory, this what they accomplished, the importance of Hanukkah historically, and then the end is to tell you how unimportant Hanukkah is, right? The climax is, right? The climax of the halacha. I don't mean that the halacha shouldn't have been included. The halacha is included in Shulchan Aruch, but not with this flourish, not about Shalom Bayit, not at the end. But the Rambam decides to end. The climax is to tell you how unimportant Hanukkah is, right? Or the thing that we commemorate with Hanukkah when it comes into conflict with that which the Torah is comprehensively aimed towards, the ultimate goal, which is here, Shalom Bayit. Most people, by the way, interpret Ner Beito to be the light of Shabbat, the light of Shabbat. So when there's a conflict, the light, meaning the lights that we all are familiar with, of Shabbat, take precedence. Now, I'm going to come to that later on, that's not that clear, which will accentuate my point even more. Now, what does that mean? I'm going to try to explain what the Rambam is trying to get at here, or what I think the Rambam is trying to get at here. So the link between the priority of life, of normal life, or of life in general, really is linked to Shabbat on the whole. That is, that halacha that we all know, that life or health really trumps halacha. That is, one knows that you violate halacha, virtually everything except, of course, the famous 3 cardinal mitzvot, right? Those are exceptions to the rule. But the rule is that all halacha can be broken or must be violated, not can, must be violated. That is a halachic principle, right? Must be violated to maintain life, is linked originally to Shabbat. And so I have here a couple of sources. Priority of life, lo litnu, here's source 4, lo litnu mitzvot liYisrael, el lichyot bahen, shenemar, asher yaseh otam hadam, v'chai bahem. Because it says in the Torah, these are the things you should do, and you should live by them. V'chai bahen, v'lo sheyamut bahen. Now, the truth is, so that is that verse, from a pshat point of view, that is simply from a plain meaning point of view, does not in any way mean that you should violate the law in order to live by them. It's simply a very kind of ordinary thing. You shall live by the law. You shall live by the law. Chazal brilliantly read that to mean v'chai v'hem. That's Chazal's words, right? These words, yaseh otam, meaning yaseh otam hadam v'chai v'hem, is the Torah's words. These are Chazal's words. These are the rabbinic words. V'chai b'hen v'lo sheyamut b'hen, meaning they make the logical conclusion that it means that halacha is given to us to live by. And I would take meaning to live by, that means to promote life, to promote all those things that the Rambam said we reestablished, to promote sovereignty, to promote the monarchy, to promote nationalism, to promote life, to promote family life, which the Greeks destroyed, right? That those things are paramount and take priority over Shabbat in this case, because of pikuach nefesh. I think a lot of people don't realize that's live by them and not die by them is the rabbi's darshaning, right? Interpreting the verse. And so I think that's interesting because if you look at source 3, for instance, the halachic basis, there's a lot of other kind of rationales given. The one that wins out is this v'chai bahem v'lo sheyamut bahem. Now, what is really interesting is that perhaps, I'm not a historian, I'm more a philosopher, Jewish thought, but I think that the earliest historical evidence we have of this drasha put into action on the ground is related to Hanukkah, from the first book of Maccabees, is perhaps the most important source we have, right? It's not, of course, included in our canon, right, in the Tanakh, but it is an important historical source written about, 80 some years after the event, right? But it is, I would say, the most important source. There we have this law for the first time. We see it historically put into action in connection with Hanukkah. The Greeks arose suddenly to fall upon the Jews on Shabbat, right? And the men in their midst, meaning the Jews, did not raise their hands, hurl a stone, and the Greeks fell upon them and killed everybody out. Of course, the Greeks quickly, right, tuned into the fact that the Jews, according to the book of Maccabees, didn't fight on Shabbat because it violated the Shabbat, and they massacred them, right? Then the Maccabees said, kind of commiserated and said, hey, if we all act this way and refuse to defend our lives and beliefs, we will surely be wiped out, right? Because the Greeks will wait. Hey, let's wait till they light the Shabbos candles and we'll go in and just massacre them. They decided on that day, whoever will attack us on Shabbat, we will fight back. We will not die like our brothers on the caves. So even from a historical evidence that is outside kind of the rabbinic canon, it kind of corroborates this idea that Chazal, the way Chazal read the verse, that life itself, right, it really is paramount over all else, over the entire halachic system, and that is linked to Hanukkah itself. Now, the Rambam in his laws of Shabbat actually says, right, the following, and it ties in with the end of the halachot of Hanukkah. That is, when there is a problem, there's a danger to health, right, and you must violate Shabbat. This is one that maybe people generally don't know all that well. It must be done. That is, the violation of Shabbat, this is really interesting, should not be done by goyim, by children, by slaves, of course, by women, of course, right? Those who hold, occupy the lower end of the hierarchy, of course, in the Rambam's time, in rabbinic times, right? Ela al yidei gedolei Yisrael v'chachamehem. That is when Shabbos has to be violated in order to avert a danger to health. Actually, what you should do, you have all these people around, you have children around, you have doctors around, you have goyim around. You should go to the rabbi of the shul, or you should go to the main posek, right? The biggest posek in Toronto, right? And tell him, we need you to come here to violate the Shabbat, because it's not a violation of Shabbat, right? Lamarita she'ein, and it's very similar to what he says in Hanukkah. Ein mishpatei Torah nikama bolam. The laws of the Torah weren't meant to institute things that are oppressive. Elorachamim v'chesed v'shalom. They're meant to actually promote kindliness, peace, mercy, that kind of thing. And when it comes into conflict, which this does, of course, a danger to life, that is, life is about to be endangered or wiped out. And so that becomes actually a kiyum Shabbat, not a violation. It's not a violation. It's a kiyum. It's a fulfillment of Shabbat. And so in order for people not to get the idea that this is a violation and we need to minimize it and get some child to do it, to turn on the light or whatever it is, if he's 16, drive the car. No, you get the Gedolei Yisrael, right? You get Rav Moshe Feinstein, right, to come and do it. And the same reason that he has at the end of Hilchos Chanukah. So I want to take you to the only other place. I wasted a little bit of time with those technological difficulties, so I hope people are still listening in. The only other place where he quotes that verse from Mishlei, right? Remember that he quoted at the end of Hilchot Chanukah. The only other place is at the very end of the Mishnah Torah, just before he's about to introduce the laws. They're not really laws, again, that shows that the Mishnah Torah is not, strictly speaking, a legal code. The laws of the Mashiach, right? He quotes that verse. That is, that afilu akum or goyim or whatever, there's a problem here with the manuscripts also. That is, that even goyim, the rabbis commanded us to visit their sick, to bury their dead, along with the dead of Israel, to support their poor, right? To give charity to their causes, along with the poor of Israel, mipnei darchei shalom, because of that phrase that he quoted in Hilchot Chanukah, mipnei darchei shalom. And then he quotes the verse, the same verse, right? Now, to me, what that means, let me go to Rashi, and the way many people, a lot of my colleagues in the yeshiva world, take darchei shalom to mean, you know what, it's not ikar hadin. It's not, it's not really the real law, but because we live in a Gentile society, we live among goyim, we don't want to alienate them from us. So we treat them correctly. We visit their sick. We do all the things that we do for our Jewish brethren, but really it's kind of what we call a b'di'evet, a kind of a consolation prize in order to maintain our proper relations. Now, if I interpret this correctly, if he's quoting this verse, which is the same verse he quoted at the end of Hilchot Chanukah, to convey the point that the entire Torah's goal is to promote darchei shalom, it cannot be that darchei shalom means what I just said. It cannot mean that. It must mean that this is the ikar hadin, that this is because it is the goal of the entire Torah, right? I mean, if you put this verse, which is the only other time he quotes it, along with the way he quoted it before. Now, versus Rashi, who says, when there's not protest against poor Gentiles, meaning there's a law that you allow, for instance, in the sabbatical year, not just Jews to come into your fields, but goyim as well. And Rashi says, on account of the ways of peace, right? And he says, although they are meant exclusively for the Jewish poor, on account of the ways of peace. So clearly Rashi considers this a kind of secondary thing meant to maintain relationships. You live in, whatever, there's goyim around, you don't want to alienate them. So that's my interpretation. Maybe not, but I think to me, it's fairly clear that there's an essential difference. Now, the reason I think he has that at the end of Hilchot Chanukah, and he has this right before he starts the laws of the Messiah, is that in the laws of Messiah, what is most prominent about the Rambam is he says, there is nothing that will change, and this is source 9, if you see my cursor, in the Messianic era and in the normal historical era, Ela olam kiminhago noheg. At the end, this is another subject. You can invite me again to talk about the laws of Messiah, but the whole purpose of the Messianic era ultimately is lasum shalom ba'olam. Again, right? That is, clearly he preceded, right? He prefaced the laws of Mashiach with that law that I just read about the way you treat goyim, because ultimately, the goal of the Messianic period is to inculcate a state of peace in the entire world, right? So obviously one of the things you would want to preface the Messianic era is maintaining good relations, right? Elijah or whoever comes to introduce the Mashiach will not come to do anything, purify, impure, disqualify people who are presumed to have, or not qualify them. He will only come to bring peace in the world. So my point is, and I'm going to try and end with this, is that the reason the asymmetry or the symmetry in Hilchot Chanukah is what he did is everything he started with, that is war, right? The idea of the temple as the central point, the miracle, are replaced at the end but by what he considered the most important elements in Jewish life, that Hanukkah, with all those elements, with of course war is required sometimes, but let's not miss the point of all of it. That is, he replaced the Mikdash with the home, right? Those lights that rededicated the Mikdash, now, right at the end of Hilchot Hanukkah, the most important thing you shouldn't forget is that the bayit is really the most important thing, right? The Nes is replaced, or perhaps, who knows what he means. At the end, he does talk about Nisim, but he's ambiguous. Could be the war that ultimately was to institute a state of peace. And by the way he describes what the Chashmonaim reintroduced was exactly what the Melech Mashiach is supposed to reintroduce, a period of monarchy, right? The reestablishment of sovereignty, the rededication of the temple. So what he's done is he shifted the focus so that people don't think that the means are the ends. The means are the ends. The end is not the Mikdash, not the Nes, not even God necessarily, because the erasure, he ends with the erasure of the name of God, but it is peace, it is the bayit, it is relationship. And so I'll just end with the following. That is that, go back to that Ner Beito, that phrase that virtually everyone takes to be the light of Shabbat. Actually, the Ritva, one of the great Rishonim, one of the great medieval interpreters, Rav Yontov Asavia Ishbili from Seville, says the following: Shmonat Yemei Chanukah Asurim behesped v'tanot. He talks about what you can't do. You can work. Sorry, that's a different. Here's Ritva. Ner Chanukah v'ner Beito, right? When there's a conflict, the same thing that I talked about. Ner Beito takes priority. Pirish, meaning, here's explaining. Im ein lo shemen l'shteim. If he doesn't have enough oil for the two of them, the light of his house, he should light the one that is required for his house. Ve'ein tzarich lomar k'sheba lahadlik shtein. Makdim ladlik ner beito, and of course, like all the more so if you have resources for the two of them, the light of your house takes precedence, right? The chen, and also be'erev Shabbat, madlik shel beito tchila. Also, when it comes to the ner of Shabbat, you light, right? The light of Hanukkah trumps the light of the Shabbat. Meaning, the Ritva interprets ner beito not the ner beit of Shabbat, but the simple candles of the regular weekday, right? The regular weekday, right? You require light to have, to have a normal family life. You can't have a family life in the dark. You can't have relations, with your wife, with your children in the dark, right? You need that, and that trumps. And so the Ritva says that ner beito, which is an interesting phrase, means every day, not just Shabbat. And that just, I guess, emphasizes, I think, the point I'm trying to make even further. So I'll just end with the following. You talked about this series being rededication, dedication and rededication. The Rambam actually talks about the word dedicate and talks about the meaning of the word in his commentary on the Mishnah. There is a Mishnah in Menachot that talks about how you dedicate a mizbeach, an altar. And there, I'm not going to go into that. And there he says the term chinuch, of course, which is chanach, which is the root of this word, is a borrowed term. What he means by that is a figurative term. It's a figurative term used in these matters to signify the initiation of things. That is, with respect to a person who is taught wisdom or ethics, it is to acclimatize the person to it until it becomes his second nature. Lahagil atzmo ba ad shetehei kfua bo. Meaning that is, if this really ultimately, the way I'm kind of talking about it, is about Chanukah Habayit, right? Ultimately, he ends off Chanukah HaMikdash, the Nes, with simply Chanukah Habayit. Then it means that Chanukah is a prime holiday, which should be used, or should be also have in mind when you're lighting the candles, that this is all about ultimately shalom, shalom bayit, all those things that the Rambam says leads to ultimately the Messianic era, right? And to do this every Erev Shabbat, to do this every day that you light the candles, until that idea becomes so ingrained in your mind that it becomes actually second nature. So I'll end there. With that, I'm happy if anybody's still here. I can't see if anybody's still here, but I'm happy to take questions if you want. Thanks.
We're also here. I know Dahlia has a question.
Yeah, I have a question. I
Sure.
never noticed that Chanukah and Lechanech, which means to educate, are the same root
Right.
until you
right.
just brought that up.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's a very, very interesting
right.
concept to me. So are you saying that when you dedicate the Chanukah Habayit, that when we dedicate even the temple, and it's the whole thing is the purpose of all of these mitzvot is to educate us. So when you dedicate the temple, is it also about education? I mean, I'd like to know if you see a connection between these two concepts.
Right. So that's an excellent question. And again, I'm talking about the Rambam, remember, who might be different than others. So what I'm going to give you is my answer with reference to the Rambam. Okay. So with respect to the Rambam, my answer to your question is absolutely yes. That is, if I was talking to, let's say, people who are Kabbalistically inclined, people who are Hasidically inclined, or even many people in the rabbinic world, have a different notion of mitzvot, perhaps that the actual simply doing the mitzvot have some effect, some impact on an upper world, have an impact on God. I actually think that that's not at all the Rambam's view. The Rambam has a very practical, pragmatic view of mitzvot, that they are all, in a sense, meant, taking your question's terminology, to teach you things. In the Rambam's case, it means ultimately all these things are a framework within which to cultivate knowledge of God. So that's what his, but from a general sense, yes, they are functional. That is, they are functional rather than what I would say essential, use a philosophical word, ontological. So there is a very strong trend in Judaism, and I'm not at all minimizing that. I'm just talking about the Rambam that sees, you know what, this actually impacts on the world. It has super kind of natural effects. It even impacts on God. I don't think the Rambam at all has that or subscribes to that kind of theology. So that's my answer to you. It's very much a chinuch idea of mitzvot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other
Anybody
questions?
else?
Jimmy, may I ask you, does chinuch in his idea relate to CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, atmada, get used to it, learn how to do it, midei shelo lishma, yavo lishma?
I mean, he does have that. He talks about that elsewhere. He's not big ultimately on shelo lishma, right? As nobody should be. But I think that's part of it. He actually, in his guide, talks about different forms of knowledge, for instance, and different ways one becomes educated towards the truth. And he talks about things that are shalol lishma, or things that you don't really know, maybe some stuff that you're just told by your parent to do this, and you do it. He says that that has a place, right? But only a place in order ultimately to do, I guess, what you're saying, CBT. But that's not his ultimate goal. Obviously, it is a means to an end. Now, I think maybe your CBT has to do a lot with what I talked about in Shabbat, where he says the greatest people have to violate Shabbat, right? That is because people tend to minimize. They think, oh, you know what, we need to violate the Shabbat, and they think that when you are breaking what is the law in order to when a life is in danger, they think you're breaking the law, right? And so you need to use a little bit CBT and as therapy, bring the greatest guy, the guy who no one would ever think would ever violate the law, to actually violate the law because it's not violating the law, right? So maybe I don't know if that answered the question, but I think that is an important part of it. Phil, does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, he actually gave you like a thumbs up, but you can't.
Oh, okay. No,
Yeah.
Yeah, it answers it. Thank you.
okay.
Professor,
Yeah.
do we have actually examples of that where someone very great breaks the law, which is not really a law that was broken? Do we have an example of that?
You know what, we do. There's all kinds of stories. Maybe somebody else can help me out. There's one with, I think, the Brisker Rav, where this happened, and the exact same thing happened, and he did it. Like he did this for whoever was sick. So it has happened. I'm not that familiar with the stories, but I'm more kind of in the theoretical part of it. So maybe some other people here have know stories like that, but I know of one with the Brisker Rav, that is the Soloveitchik family, that happened.
But
Because
what about in our times today? What about
personally,
today?
I'm not that familiar with stories like that. Maybe they're too few, but this is in the Rambam's legal code. I mean, he codifies this, right? He codifies this as explicit law. I don't know. I mean, maybe like it should be more well known, but so all I can say is I'm not that familiar with actual incidents, but I'm sure there are.
What about during, say, the Holocaust?
Okay, there I'm not sure what the question is exactly.
Well, was there, say, a great rabbi that said, no, we can break Shabbat and go from there? I mean,
Absolutely.
And save ourselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There were many. I mean, the one I'm most familiar with because I work on it is the Warsaw Ghetto Rebbe, but who actually at some point there's letters where he told people to do that. He laments at times the problem of violating Shabbat, but he doesn't he doesn't ever say one can't. Of course one can. I mean any halachist worth his salt, right? And in the Holocaust as well would say that you have to, of course. So that happened again. I can't imagine even somebody, anybody in a position of authority, halachist, would have said that if your life is in danger, that you don't violate Shabbat. It's impossible. It's impossible to me that could have happened.
I think that there's, go ahead, Dahlia.
No, go ahead. You go ahead first.
I was just, I'm reasonably certain that there is a Ma'aseh Shahaya with Rabbi Israel Salanter eating and drinking on Yom Kippur because his congregation had either malaria, dysentery, diphtheria, something that was killing them.
Right.
And if they went 25 hours without water, it would be possibly fatal. And
Right.
so he stood up in front of them and said, it's Yom Kippur, I'm doing this, you need to do it too.
Right. So there you go. There's a story which it makes absolute sense. I mean, it's consistent with, of course, the Rambam's halacha, and I think any great man, I don't care what stripe they are on the religious spectrum, even Satmar, would do that. I just can't imagine, otherwise. That is the halacha, right? That is the halacha. In fact, to be a Haredi, one would do that, right? That is a fulfillment of Shabbat, not a violation or a fulfillment of the fast.
Right, because as you said, the fast is a means to an end.
Right.
It's not, the question is, what is the meaning of the action that you're taking?
Exactly. Right.
So can I get out of this share? It's Dahlia. I just wanted to,
Of course.
if I quote, that this is something I learned from the share. Tell me if I misunderstood it. But from what I'm getting is that the Chanukah Habayit was not really only about the rededication of the Beit HaMikdash, that was the bayit, but our own bayit, because the Greeks and had so violated our own home life and our own family life and everything that was important to surviving as a Jewish people at home and with our children and education and with our marital relations, etc. So the Chanukah Habayit was also a rededication of our home life. So is that what the Rambam is saying?
Yeah. So I think
I don't know.
I think that's correct. I don't want to be taken to mean that Hanukkah does stand for all those things that we normally associate it with, and the Rambam doesn't disagree with that. What I'm trying to say is that don't lose the forest for the trees, according to Rambam. Know always, exactly, I think what you asked me before, what the ultimate aim is, what the ultimate aim of the war was, what the ultimate aim of the Ness was, what the ultimate aim of the temple was, right? Yeah. All these things is ultimately to maintain Jewish life, right? The temple really, well, this is a long discussion, and and the miracles. So that is, I think you're absolutely right, but not to minimize. That is, he's not saying that that Hanukkah doesn't stand for all those things, but to understand the ultimate goal. And so I think that's why what I'm explaining is the end where he minimizes Hanukkah. That is, Hanukkah takes a back seat. Shalom Bayit is that idea in the Rambam that we always have to remember what the ultimate aims and the ultimate goals are, right? Of the wars, of the Nisim, of historical episodes, of the temple, right? All these things, where often people see them as ends in themselves, the Rambam sees it differently.
Jimmy,
I think what you said is correct, but I don't want people to go
I
and
get
say,
it now. Right,
Jimmy
right,
says,
thank you.
yeah, that I said that, you don't have to light the candles, don't worry, don't go in, right? So that kind of thing. Okay.
Jimmy, you made me think of something based on the comment that Charlie made in terms of an example. I'm not going to disclose the person, but there's a Holocaust survivor who's a member at Shir Shemaim. And during Kol Nidre this year in the tent, he approached me and he remembered that in 1943, during Yom Kippur, he was in a concentration camp, a young man.
Right.
And it was time for Kol Nidre. A group of them snuck into the latrine. He said some of them were fainting from the smell.
Right.
And quietly, Kol Nidre was sung by rote.
Right.
And immediately after, they only did it once, not 3 times, because life was precious.
right,
Immediately after the first enunciation of it, they snuck back into the stall that they were kept in.
right,
Because if they would have been found by the SS, they would have been all executed immediately.
right, right,
So there seems to be an example of a compromise where what is important was being done,
right.
but at the same time, to protect human life, it was
Right.
modified.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I
Well-
didn't want to get it, it's interesting that all
I-
conversations ultimately end up there. So I didn't want to get into the Holocaust, but
Jimmy?
that's a
Can I-
obviously a very important point. Yeah.
It's Jerry. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
Jerry, hi.
I think there's one concept that you haven't hit, and that's where the Talmud says that they're more interested in you keeping lots of Shabbases rather than just one. And
Right.
if you're going to die or whatever, you're obviously only, there's also the numbers game,
Right, right,
which is also part of all this.
right, right.
When it says Lasso is a Shon B'nai Yisrael, Lasso is Shabbos L'Dor Vosam, that
Right.
you can continue to do.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So in answer to that, you're absolutely right. But remember, there's a whole bunch of opinions, right? There's a whole bunch of rationales, and the rationale that wins out, at least according to later, to Shmuel, he says, if I would have been there, right? If I would have been there when they were arguing and all these different people giving these rationales, including the one that you gave, right? This one that is v'chai b'hem v'shloshi yamut b'hem would be the best, right? So you're right. There are, but that's one rationale.
It's included in that because
Right? It could, you know what? You're
it's
right.
Another aspect of it.
Right. It could be included in it, or it could actually be a kind of a separate thing.
But it's part of the conversation.
It's part of the conversation. You're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. But I think the way the Rambam is taking it is that halacha is meant to serve human beings, not the other way around. Right? It's not not the other way around, and that's an important point. That God doesn't need it. Right? God doesn't need it at all. Right. And actually for the Rambam, it doesn't even do anything for God. It doesn't even impact on God at all in the slightest. Right. It's for you. And so if it's for you, if it comes into conflict with you actually being there for the rest, or you being, obliterated, then of course life trumps it. But you're absolutely right, Jerry. That's part of it. Yeah. But I think, I don't know if you were trying to say that that means then that the goal is really keeping halakha, right? That the end goal is you violate one so that you can keep on keeping halakha. I'm not sure. Is that what?
No, that they're part of the dynamic or the dialectic or whatever includes the numbers game. That's all. That the rules are
right
to try and keep many Shabbases, not to look at just the one,
right,
or whatever it is.
Right. Right. Yeah, but I mean, yeah. But
The Shalom part is as being paramount is another part of the conversation.
Right.
I see it that way, but anyway, okay.
No, but the Rambam picks up on that Shalom part
Because he isn't talking here about an end game. For example, he's talking about which candle comes first, so to speak. But you're going to have other opportunities. It's when what you're going to do is going to miss other opportunities, then you take that into account.
Yeah, but that's not the Rambam's position, I don't think. I mean, that's not the Rambam's position at all. I mean, he doesn't say that.
Okay.
I mean, he says it comes into conflict with the ultimate aim, the overarching aim of the entire Torah. I mean, that's what he says. It's not at all about a numbers game. It's the mitzvah to have an overarching goal. And so when they come into conflict, obviously one has to fall, right? So he's not playing, I don't think he's playing the numbers game.
No, but they may not necessarily come into conflict. It's just another way, when even without conflict, this is one of the ways that you should look at it, that try and don't look at just the one thing that you're not doing, look at what you may continue to do in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. I don't think that's what the Rambam is actually saying.
No, not here.
Right, and not.
But the Gemara brings that one.
No, the Gemara. Listen, Jerry. You know as well as I do that the Rambam is not exactly the Gemara all the time. In fact, according to the manuscripts, the way I started off, he's completely not like the Gemara, right? Where they lit the candles, Benasa Bon Nes, which is clearly in the Gemara. He most likely left out. Again, I don't know 100%, but I'm pretty sure, because all the best manuscripts, and if Rabbi Rabinovich left it out, I'm okay with that too. But anyways, we can have this conversation. I think you raised an important point, but another time, hopefully we'll meet panim someday, talk further about it.
Just before we go, this part of the discussion reminds me of the Hilchas Tzedakah that you get from the Rambam, where he discusses, is it better to give $1 1,000 times or $1,000 once? He comes down in favor of $1 1,000 times. Why? It's the same $1,000, but because it's more transformative of your experience, you get more meaning out of it.
Right.
Yeah, great. That's a great example, Shana, I think, because I mean, I think that's the point that Professor Diamond is trying to make with Jerry, that from the Rambam's point of view, the whole thing is about transformation and education and educating you to be a better person.
Yeah.
And
But
which
I mean,
one
Jerry might
accomplish that better.
but
Not
this
that
might be
Jerry's
good.
point is not well taken. It's just that doesn't happen to be what the Rambam.
Although I guess Jerry, if I can say, this might help Jerry, because Jerry could say that's exactly a numbers game, right? I don't know.
Right, exactly.
So,
I didn't want to.
No, I canvass all the arguments. It's okay.
That's
It's okay.
one part of the dynamic or the dialectic. That's all.
Yeah, I just don't think that's what he's doing here, but
Okay.
But maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Diamond. This was really a lovely way to enter the new Chodesh, to end off Shabbat. We really appreciate your time and your expertise. Please God, one day we can do this in person again.
Yeah. And thanks very much for giving me something to do on a Motzei Shabbos.
Well, thank you very, very much. And
All right. Chag Sameach.
the next time we'll try to get a much bigger crowd for this.
That's
this was
okay. Thanks
A
for
very
tuning in.
stimulating and
The important people came, right, Delia?
Yeah.